And hello everybody and welcome to Royal Purple P1 qualifying here for tomorrow's Rolex Grand Prix of Daytona. Be the second stop on the season for the Body Armor Cup Series, coming off of that thriller last week down at New Smyrna, last Saturday night down at New Smyrna for the first race of the season. We are down here in Daytona for race number 2, the Rolex Grand Prix here on the Daytona road course. I believe this is one of the first ever times in the NOFSRL Cup cars will have hit the road course here at Daytona. Got everybody, all 32 drivers will be in the field today. Unlike New Smyrna, everybody makes the field. Everybody's in the field here this week. But as always, top 10 in points make it. I'm joined today and tomorrow, joined alongside Trey right here for the call of this race. And, so we're coming off of, it's transition-wise. We go from the Body Armor Bash running on the oval here to the tiny half-mile oval in New Smyrna, and now we come back here to Daytona for 2 races in a row, but this time we're going to be on the road course. What's that transition like for what do you think, what's going through these drivers' heads, through these first few weeks, going from super speedway to short track to road course here in the first few weeks?
Well, it's definitely been a smorgasbord of speed, and we're only 3 races into this, but the transition, these drivers are definitely nervous. A majority of these drivers probably haven't watched a single race on with NR 2003 featuring the Daytona Roval. I know we did a few events back in the day with Napa Fan did the 2.4 hours of Daytona with the LMP and the GT Daytona cars, but other than that, Daytona Roval has been pretty scarce to find, so a lot of these drivers have barely even seen a race on the Daytona Roval, much less driven on it, so it's definitely going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. There aren't going to be any cautions tomorrow, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see who can survive this.
No, it will be interesting. We've got the road course here at Daytona, not a commonly used track at all in NR. I don't think hardly any Cup Series races have ever hit the high banks here and hit the infield course. And then in a couple weeks, we'll be back here. We'll still be in Florida here for Florida Speed Weeks at Sebring for the visitflorida.com 355. That is going to be an absolute thriller down there on that flat concrete oval course there at the airfield. But take a look through the field. Dale Lighton, obviously, first one out here on his flying lap. Don't really put too much stock in these first initial laps. We got Angel Olvera, who stole a victory away last weekend at New Smyrna. He's got the points lead. And who else do we got here through the field? It's going to be interesting, too, because you have a lot of guys. The dynamic of an F1 style point system where only the top 10 drivers get points, it makes these races interesting for 2 things here on the roads, because track position's important, knowing it's going to be tough to pass. But atop of that, if you go from New Smyrna not collecting points, another week in a row not collecting points, it can put you in a hole pretty quickly in the season.
Indeed, it can. Even if you finish 11th, what will be a pretty decent run in NASCAR standards for F1. That's not exactly the best to run as wow. The 18 of Brandon Nelson was fishtailing it through the first set of S's there, but like you were saying, you've got to finish in the top 10 if you want, pretty much every single race if you want a halfway decent shot at winning this championship. Consistency is definitely going to be the biggest key to unlocking the championship. But at a wild card track like the Daytona Roval, a lot of the guys who finished outside the top 10 might be looking to finish in the top 10 in tomorrow's race. And a lot of guys that were pretty good on the short track aren't really excited about this, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Now it shall be interesting. Dale Lightning here, though, setting the pace as he was the first man out on the track. He hits his first lap, 149.592. Qualifying also always important here because you're not getting a lot of, this is a 3.5 mile road course. You are not getting a lot of laps in, but Lightning sets the pace. Going to see Scott Upton. He clocks in at 149.793. Keegan Thompson right behind, 150.073. A little off there for him. Oh, hold on. Who do we got here? 38, Ryan Durrani to the top of the board, 149.550. Everybody's starting to file in here. See everybody's starting to click their lap times. Zidell to the top of the charts. And let's see Johnson across the line. He'll make it in the top 4. It's going to be interesting here. because you definitely, the other thing too, when you come to these racetracks, getting a good starting spot on a racetrack like this where it is tough to pass, it makes qualifying here 10-minute session, especially when you only get a couple of laps in. It makes it all the more important here to hit your marks and get that fast lap in qualifying.
That is exactly. We saw this in the Portland race a couple weeks ago on Napa Fan, where qualifying was definitely the key for a lot of drivers to have a decent day. If you don't hit your marks on qualifying at a track that it is a hybrid super speedway, it is a roadable, but the other 2/3 of it are a road course, so it's definitely going to be a hard place to pass. So if you don't hit your marks during qualifying, chances are you probably aren't going to do good during the race.
No, definitely. Up front, though, you want to talk about two guys taking advantage of fast race cars. Igor Barreto in the 51, Brock Nelson in the 22. Barreto gets bumped back to P3 for the moment, P4, but these two drivers did not even make the show for the main event at New Smyrna last Saturday night. They sit currently provisionally P1 for Nelson, P5 for Barreto. Now let's take a look here. Chase Buck in the Mercedes, not Lipscomb, Chase Buck in the 84. He's jumped up to second. Lightning's back up to third. You got the 25 of Josh Williamson, the pole winner from New Smyrna, showing a lot of speed in qualifying. Scott Upton getting it in there. He's going to clock in 149, 192. A lot of guys in the 148s. Most guys in the 149s. Couple guys in the 148s. Probably going to be about where we see most of the field here. The other thing too, though, the one thing about not everybody getting points, if you are sitting here, if you're a guy like Dale Lightning, if you're a guy like Robbie Noonan, you didn't even make the field last week. Realistically, even though you didn't make the field, you could jump yourself with not necessarily a win, but a solid top 6, top 5 finish. You could jump yourself from sitting, say, 32nd in points all the way back up into the top 10, just like that. The one thing about having only top 10 getting points, it's tough because if you screw up early, continually, you're in a hole. But if you take advantage of that one mistake and you correct upon it, you can jump right back in a heartbeat.
Exactly. Like, you make one or two mistakes early in the season, you still have a pretty decent shot to win the championship because only a select number of guys get the points, only the top 10 finishers in the race, like you said. But if you just keep having those problems time and time again, bad pit stops, tire failures, cars plowing in the center of the corner and stuff like that, if you continue to have those continuous finish outside the top 10, I'd say within a couple, 5 or 6 weeks, your chances of winning the championship are just growing dimmer and dimmer until it's just completely out. So.
Definitely. Ooh, this is going to be an interesting one to hear. Ryan Durrani sitting flush in the toe off of Brandon Nelson in the 18. Ran out of gas late in the going in New Smyrna. Let's see if these two coming across the line, if that draft helped either of them at all. Not there. Not there. Neither of them really getting any noticeable bump. So it still sits Brock Nelson. So it goes Brock Nelson, Chase Buck, Williamson up to 4th, Barreto's up to 5th, or my bad, Williamson up to 3rd, Barreto up to 4th, Nathan Faden is in 5th, Zidell, as Bronson Minnick slides off, Zidell's in 6th, you got Upton, Durrani, and Patrick Smith and Dale Lightning in 10th. Take a look at the rest of the field there. So 105 to go here. It's a tough track to pass, but it puts you to your test, and you will, makes this qualifying important. See Williamson in the toe of Dale Lightning. And this bus stop's going to be interesting. You can get a deep, if you're trailing someone here in this bus stop, you can get a deep dive into that corner. And if you nail that mark coming out of here, as Josh Williams is trying, you want to set yourself up so that way you're sitting in somebody's toe coming up the straightaway here, so you can have a long chance to make that pass down the inside and try and gain position on the front stretch.
Exactly. The two parts of the super speedway portion and the road course portion are just completely polar opposite, because you have the big fast banks of the Daytona International Speedway where this separates the brave from the weak once the boys are gone. But then once you go into the road course, it is nearly flat, just tight turns, very hard to stay on. especially coming out of that first set of S's where we've seen a couple cars sliding off. And it's very easy to wheel hop in some of those tight corners, so we're going to see guys going off track. And with there being no cautions in the race tomorrow, that could screw some guys pretty deep. So it's just an absolutely polarizing track. We have the bad fast banks of the super speedway portion, and then you have the tight, narrow, flat turns of the infield portion. So definitely going to meet. It's definitely going to be a jack of all trades type driver who's going to win tomorrow.
No, definitely. Brock Nelson, he still sits P1. Josh Williamson, as we were talking about the toe, he used that draft off of Dale Lighton and got himself all the way up to second. Only 0.07 of a second off of another pole, so he's definitely the 25 team has shown a lot of speed in qualifying this so far in these first two races, and had good speed at New Smyrna before he got shuffled out. So taking a look through. Alpha B there, just a little slide off the course, nothing, no too big of a scare. Kind of funny, these two racing side by side. Alpha B spun out last week, took out Patrick Smith in the going with that. Not a good weekend for either of them. Let's see, coming up through here, I figure this is going to be most of these guys' final lap. I don't see anybody gaining a huge draft advantage anywhere. Thomas Troxell's a little too far behind Usman Hamid to get the draft there. See everybody diving down. Most of these guys think they're already on their last lap. Who else do we got? Coming across the line. Williamson wasn't close enough to gain anything. Robbie Noonan. See where he's set. He's currently sitting in 31st. Not a good qualifying for that team. Keegan Thompson. Because Durrani's the only one who has a toe and maybe a chance, but I think time's about ready to expire as he hits the stripe here.
Exactly, and I think Josh Williamson's going to be kicking himself in the head right now because he is, even though he is starting on the front row, he is going to be starting on the outside lane, and we've seen like with cars getting starting on the outside lane here in the past, it often does not work as it's more likely that you'll slide off course and lose a ton of position. So Williamson does have a pretty fast race car. The handling is definitely going to be a factor, and not just for him, but just for everybody in this race. As Brock Nelson wins the ball.
Brock Nelson. Yep, Brock Nelson not making the field last week puts himself P1 heading into tomorrow's 14-lap race. A big moment for that team trying to gain a lot of points that they lost. There's your top 10. Nelson, Josh Williamson, Chase Buck, Igar Barreto, Nathan Faden, Zidell, Upton, Durrani, Patrick Smith, and Brett Sierra. Take a look at the rest of that field. A lot of guys who did not get points last week in the top 10. That is going to be interesting to watch as the championship rolls on. But congrats to Brock Nelson. He will start P1 tomorrow. And on behalf of Trey Wright, I'm Matt Tuck, and we will see you guys tomorrow afternoon.